This video provides much more than mere inspirational content. It serves as a profound source of self-empowerment, underlining the crucial importance of liberating ourselves from any addictive behaviors that hold us captive.
Create Pavlovian reactions to ourselves, to the things that we want.
Well, and there's a dark side to this too. And it's something that I think especially guys, young guys, have to be careful of, which is nowadays, the availability of pornography is nothing like it used to be, right? Someone used to have a magazine or a video. Now there's access to pornography is just, a couple, thumb taps to a couple people.
The message here is about the inherent strength that lies within every individual, waiting to be tapped into. Every new day dawns the promise of change, a fresh start, and the opportunity to make a positive difference in our lives.
I don't have anything, I don't have any problem with, I'm basically like live and let live, as long as you don't harm anyone. But kids vaping or smoking high THC containing cannabis, there's a huge predisposition towards psychosis in those kids later, especially young males. A lot of what you see in terms of homelessness on the street, a lot of that psychosis is high THC cannabis induced. And nobody likes this mess. Very, very serious. There's amazing research out of Canada on this. And then here's what I'm not trying to do. I'm not trying to take away anybody's cannabis. I know the cannabis culture worked hard to get it legalized in a number of places or decriminalized. So I'm not trying to take away from that. But young kids, in particular, young males smoking very high potency, meaning high THC concentrated cannabis, indica couch kind of, weed might mellow people out, or sativas might make them more ramped up. This is kind of broad sweep stuff, but cannabis is not an innocuous drug. Tonggak Ali is an Indonesian ginseng. There's a Malaysian version too, but you want the Indonesian one if you want to pursue these effects, which are, it's known to decrease sex hormone binding globulin, which frees testosterone, which is important in both men and women. It turns out in women, there's more testosterone circulating in a healthy woman, post-puberty woman, than there is estrogen. Peter Attia taught me this. If you normalize for nanograms per deciliter, women have more testosterone than estrogen. Healthy women do. So testosterone is associated with libido, ability and desire to generate effort, mood, etc. in men and women. Probably the best way to describe testosterone's effects are it makes effort feel good. So Tonggak Ali frees up more testosterone, so it mild libido enhancer for some, more extreme for others. Increases energy, will increase, feelings of well-being, and typically the dosages are 400 milligrams a day in single dose or divided doses with or without food, taken early in the day, before noon or 2 p.m., because it can increase energy. You don't want to disrupt your sleep. There are a number of good sources of it. We can provide links to a couple of those sources. So I've done episodes of our podcast on love, attachment, and relationships, which is a fascinating literature, mostly from psychology, but also biological literature. And that's mostly about people's orientation toward attachment. So just very quickly, there's the so-called secure attached style. This typically emerges in childhood when there's a very predictable caregiver-caree relationship between child and most often mother, but it can be father too or other caregiver. Just so happens that the classic experiments were done on mothers because this was in the 1970s and there weren't as many reverse role, homes, etc. There were some, but not as many as there are now. So that's one style of attachment. The parent leaves, the child gets a little distraught, but then can distract itself doing other things or just simply do other things because they have a high degree of intrinsic knowledge, not the thought, but intrinsic calm. The autonomic nervous system doesn't feel any need to ramp up because the mom returns. Then there's the so-called insecure attachment styles, and there are a bunch of different ones, but those are the ones where it's really stressful when the parent leaves. It's not clear they're going to come back, and when they come back, it's not clear that they're going to reestablish the bond, the child will feel supported, etc.
Clinical fetish.
I have to say, that I get hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of questions, different health topics and science topics. One of the most common questions I get is how to quit porn addiction. And I would say about 25% of the people that I'm aware of, based on those questions, and a few people that I happen to know who are porn addicted, are women. And it becomes an issue where, you ask, can there become a like self-conditioned Pavlovian response.
Yeah.
And it's like, absolutely. Anything that...
Just to clarify real quick for people listening, like what a Pavlovian reaction is.
So Pavlov won the Nobel Prize, the so-called Pavlov dog experiments, where basically you offer an animal some food or the smell of food, it starts salivating, but right before that you ring a bell.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon all you need to do is ring the bell and the animal starts salivating.
Yeah. So now they're reacting to the bell ring,
right,
not the actual...
You're a psychology major, UCSB.
You know, baby, we out
could take
here.
the final exam now. Yeah. TA to class together. Oh my goodness,
hilarious.
it'd be amazing.
What's the verdict on cigarettes? Are they bad for real?
Okay, nicotine, but here's what's crazy. Nicotine is neuroprotective. Nicotine is great for us. Not that everyone should take it, but it increases acetylcholine and dopamine and epinephrine, leads to heightened focus, improved memory, and can offset neurodegeneration and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Yes.
Okay. Can we basically have this blurb that says Professor Huberman says smoking cigarettes is good for you?
No, because smoking cigarettes is bad because it's carcinogenic.
Oh.
There are about 1,000 carcinogens in cigarettes. Vaping is bad because of the chemicals that you're inhaling with it. Dipping and snuffing, not that the snuffing is just weird. Does anyone really shove tobacco up their nose? I mean, that's
nose.
Yeah, that's snuffing. They'll put tobacco. Yeah, and rape, which is, if you look at rape, R-A-P, like people will put the tobacco up their nose. Doja agrestis is a Nigerian shrub. It's taken from a Nigerian shrub, and it stimulates the release of luteinizing hormone, which is going to come out of the pituitary, and in women will stimulate anything that comes from downstream of luteinizing hormone in the ovary, so typically estrogen, maybe even testosterone to some extent. And in men, it will increase testosterone output from the testes by way of increasing luteinizing hormone, maybe subtle increase in estrogen as well. This is important. Men hear that something increases estrogen, and they go, "Oh, I don't want that." Well, keep in mind that if you flatline your estrogen, so if men are taking an anastrozole or crushing their estrogen, their libido is going to be zero.
Yeah.
Their cognitive ability will be diminished. Estrogen is important in both men and
Also
women.
cardioprotective, isn't it?
Cardioprotective. The endothelial cells, we think of our blood vessels and our arteries and capillaries as tubes, but they're really tubes. Imagine silly putty kind of rolled out, Play-Doh made into little flat sheets and then rolled up to comprise those tubes. So it's many, many endothelial cells that make up those tubes. And the flexibility of those tubes is very important. Obviously, you don't want them rigid. You need them to expand and contract as needed. And estrogen is important for some of that signaling, leading to that malleability of the endothelial cells. Doja agrestis is typically taken in dosages of 300 to 600 milligrams per day, with or without food. Doesn't seem to matter if it's early day, late day. There's some evidence that in rats, it can be toxic to the testicular tissue, but that's in very, very high concentrations. And it's interesting, the number of studies on humans for both Tonga Ali and Doja have greatly expanded since our last conversation. And especially for Tonga Ali, there's quite good support. Safety margins are good within the dosage ranges that we've talked about. I've heard of people taking up to 1 gram a day of Tonga Ali. That just makes me cringe. I think taking herbal compounds in very high concentrations is going to be risky no matter what, because these things can trigger immune responses. So, 400 milligrams of Tonga Ali, 300, 600 milligrams of Doja taken daily should be fine. I don't cycle them and never have. Some people cycle the Doja. There's a gum.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's what I think, but so I've never wanted to be. I never want to be
this big dumb fuck.
Once you waddle, right? There's sort of and I don't know why that stereotype came to be, because there's certainly some very smart, very muscular people.
Sure.
With degrees.
And it's always surprising. Honestly, it is. It's like somebody like really muscular says something remotely intelligent. You're like, get the fuck out of here with this guy. Like,
there you go, perpetuating the stereotype.
Yeah, well, it's true.
But
it's fucking true.
It's a remarkable example. And I think that, a lot these days is being made of epigenetic effects and things, but this is almost in the different direction. This is a psychophysiological response. I find this kind of thing, to be honest, among the more fascinating and interesting aspects of neuroscience, if not the most interesting lately. Those examples are tremendous, so I can't counter those at all with anything more spectacular. But the work of Dr. Aliyah Crum at Stanford, she runs the Stanford Mind Body Lab, and she's done simple experiments, but they're really elegant, instructing people, one group, all about the terrible effects of stress. Destroys your immune system, et cetera, et cetera. Other people, telling them also true things, but all the positive effects of stress. It sharpens your ability to function, you can remember things better, et cetera, et cetera. You see exactly what you are told, basically. Now, you can't lie to people. You can't tell them things that aren't true. It's just about the subset of information that you get dictates the response you get. And perhaps the most dramatic was they gave 2 different groups of people, and then they actually each got the opposite condition too, a milkshake. One group is told this milkshake is very high calorie, it contains a lot of fat and sugar, etc. Another group is told the milkshake they're getting is very low calorie, it's very nutrient sparse, etc. Then they measure hunger, so how long it takes for them to get hungry again after ingesting it. They also look at insulin, and they also look at ghrelin, this hormone that is secreted as you get, essentially makes you hungry. It's associated with hunger. There are other things too, but
there's a really interesting literature about this. If you look at sort of who people select to have sex with versus who people select to try and form long-term relationships with them, I mean, there are many men who would not choose to be with the woman that is most attractive to everybody because they don't have the confidence they could keep her.
That's
right?
a good point.
Even if she's not a flirt and wouldn't be looking, right? Even if she didn't have a wandering eye. Some men deliberately wouldn't want to be with the most beautiful. People tend to match up pretty closely in terms of attractiveness. Pretty closely. Not always.
It's not because the pretty ones are airheads.
But you asked about income, and I want to make sure that, because I had David Buss on my podcast, and he's really the expert on this, so we're going to have to fact check this with him.
Yeah.
But yes, it's true that resource potential is an important variable because people have to think about safety and childcare and a number of things.
It's the only way I have
women
a
work
wife.
too, right? Women can work too, right? They can opt to work and make money. But more often than, more important than any other feature across all cultures is that the woman reports that she sought someone who is kind to them.
So definitely the omegas and Tonga Ali. Rhodiola rosea is great to enhance workouts.
Yeah.
Fedogia is definitely it's a boost on the hormone system for sure. I have a friend who is single now. He's in a great relationship. We can't say it was because the Fedogia, but he was taking Fedogia and he was like, I got to stop taking this stuff because he was flying solo at that point. He was like, this is just really, it's really intrusive.
Intrusive because he was just humping the walls or what?
Well, I don't know if we want to go here. You know, there's this whole online community now about semen retention and things like that. He's not part of that community, but there's this idea that, well, we're adults here. I mean, there's this idea that
Speak for yourself.
if you look in the journals of sexual health,
Yeah.
and I'm really interested in sexual health and urological health. There's a ton of interesting stuff on pelvic floor. This stuff just isn't often discussed.
Yeah.
What you find is that masturbation for women turns out to their self-reported notions of well-being, of mood, of immune system function, of quote unquote knowing their bodies and what gives them pleasure, et cetera, all increase. If you look at the data in men in terms of masturbation, and here we're talking about masturbation to the point of ejaculation in men, they report lower mood, less willingness to pursue relationships.
Shocker.
You know, they're home watching porn, right? And earlier that week, there was a talk by Dr. Shayna Swan. She wrote a book called Countdown. She went on Joe Rogan's podcast, I believe earlier last year. She talked about the decline of sperm counts from the 1930s until now, and ties it in she's a serious researcher with National Institutes of Health grants, et cetera, ties this to the increasing presence of phthalates, the most difficult word to pronounce in the English language besides ophthalmology. Phthalates that are present mainly in pesticides. If you look at sperm counts and testosterone levels in males in different areas of the United States, they are significantly lower in areas where there's a lot of pesticide use, in rural areas where there's a lot of farming and pesticides. Very serious issue. And in the offspring of mothers that ingest phthalates, there's the anogenital distance is what they study in the lab.
The what?
The anogenital distance, literally the distance between the base of the scrotum and the anus in males is much greater than it is in
I can't believe
females.
that there's a word for that.
Females don't have a scrotum, obviously.
We can make some general statements about sleep that dovetail with the alcohol thing. And look, I'm not anti-alcohol. I don't have an alcohol problem. I have a drink every once in a while, no big deal. But I'm one of these people that can either do it or not do it.
Yeah.
And it does, whereas some people, they really enjoy alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. It's just never been my thing. But in any case, sleep, meaning getting enough quality sleep, 80% of the nights of your life. And I always say the other 20%, just try and make it the fact that you're not getting enough sleep for fun reasons. Out with friends, relationship, like ideally it's not because you're lying in bed stressing or et cetera. But try and get enough quality sleep 80% of the nights of your life. How much sleep do you need? Enough to feel rested during the day. Maybe you need a short nap. Napping's great, as long as it doesn't screw up your nighttime sleep.
How long should a nap be?
No longer than 90 minutes. And if you can't nap, don't worry about it. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, you don't have to be a napper. But a lot of people need a nap in the early afternoon or late afternoon in order to reset. That's totally normal. It has to do with body temperature regulation. As your body temperature goes up in the afternoon, then starts to drop, you tend to get a little bit sleepy. One way to avoid the afternoon crash, by the way, is don't drink caffeine for the first hour and a half to 2 hours after you wake up. Let a bunch of the sleepy molecules get cleared away, sleepy molecules, things like adenosine, blah, 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 and then drink your caffeine. At first, it's kind of painful to do, but you'll just go all day feeling great. It's pretty fantastic.